Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about the verb tell. This word is a word we use a lot in English and it can be a little confusing. So I want to spend a little time going over how we use it and the different ways we use it. So the verb is tell in the present tense. In the past tense we say told. Now before we use this verb, I want to review one thing. I want to talk about pronouns, subject pronouns and object pronouns. The subject pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, they. The object pronouns mean the same, but we use them in different places of a sentence. So for example, I and me, they mean the same thing. I is before the verb, me is after the verb. The object pronouns are me, you is the same, him, her, it, us, them. And so when we use the word tell, basically we use these words before the word tell or told, and these words after the word tell or told. So for example, if I want to say, if you tell me something, I say you tell me. I may say he tells us, they tell them. So we say the word tell between these two, and I'm going to leave these on the side for you to refer to if you need to. Okay, so how do we use the word tell? We may say, for example, I told you, your teacher told you something. I told you. And what's the rest of the sentence after that? So sometimes we may have a noun next, sometimes a verb next, sometimes a whole new sentence. So sometimes we say, I told you to, or we might say, I told you about, or maybe we'll say, I told you that, and then continue the sentence. So how does this work? Let me show you. We'll start with I told you to. We say I told you to if the next word will be a verb. I told you to, then any verb. So for example, I told you to go to class. I told you to call your mother. I told you to practice English. If you say, I told you go, I told you call, I told you practice, people may understand you, but you'll sound more clear, more like an English speaker if you can say, I told you to go, I told you to call, I told you to practice. So that's how we say, I told you to with a verb afterwards. Next we say, I told you about. Let's talk about that. What are some examples there? We would say, I told you about, and the next word is if we're going to say a noun, if we're going to say a thing. I told you about class. I told you about a new TV show. I told you, all right, I just went again, I'm sorry. Roll back, roll back, roll back. Where's my eraser? All right. So we use I told you to if the next thing's a verb. What if the next word's a noun? We say I told you about. So how do we do that? We say I told you about my family. I told you about my family. Or I told you about class. A class is a thing, right? A family's a group of people. I told you about the teacher. This could be a person, this could be a place. I told you about the teacher. I told you about soccer. I told you about soccer. So that's the second one, right? We say I told you to for verbs, I told you about for nouns, and sometimes we say I told you that. We say I told you that when we're going to write a complete sentence after that with a subject and a verb. So for example, we'll say I told you that, and then we have to start again with a new sentence. We have to start with a new subject pronoun. I told you that I something something something. I told you that you. I told you that he. I told you that I told you that I like class. I told you that I like class. I told you that you are a good student. I told you that she is intelligent. So if we say, I told you that, the third way, I told you that, we need to have a whole sentence. We need to start with the subject. I told you that I told you that my friend, I told you that something, 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 and that's how we continue. So there you go. You know how to say, I tell you, I told you. I told you to, verb. I told you about, noun. I told you that, a complete sentence. Please practice that a lot. Watch the video again if it's not clear, and I'll see you in class.